Everyone, and welcome to this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to improve your chess, as I will do a lot to provide useful chess content for your improvement. In today's video, I will be going through a very instructive game played by Kiril Alekseenko with the white pieces against Anish Giri with the black pieces in the 6th round of the candidate tournament. Kiril Alekseenko began with e4, Anish Giri played e5, knight f3 was played, knight c6, and then bishop c4, the Italian game was played. Bishop c5, this is the main line along with knight f6, and here Kiril Alekseenko went for castles. The main line is c3, and after knight f6, white can choose between d3 or d4. d3 is chosen a bit more at the top level games, but there is a trendy line after d4, pawn takes d4, e5, d5, bishop b5, knight e4, pawn takes d4. Here black hopes to break apart white's center with f6, and in some cases, if white takes on c6, then with c5. In the game, castles was played. Giri played knight f6. d3 was played in the game. d4 is also played quite often, and here black has to be very careful and play bishop takes d4. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, f4 trying to get some play for white, d6 only move, pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, and bishop g5, hoping to use this pin on f6 and also take on f6 in many variations, really ruining black's structure. Here black plays queen e7, knight a3, and I want to show this very smart move rook g8 with the idea that after bishop takes f6 will be played, pawn takes f6, and the rook on g8 becomes open, even though it looks a bit strange at the moment. d3 was played in the game, d6, c3, castles, rook e1, a5. So far it's a very common line, knight d2, bishop e6, bishop b5, and bishop a7. Queen b8 with the idea of queen a7 putting pressure on the f2 pawn is more common. Knight f1 was played, a typical maneuver, moving the knight to g3. Knight e7, knight g3, knight c6, bishop a4, knight g6, both players completing this maneuver. h3, and now black strikes in the center with the move d5. As after pawn takes d5, knight takes d5, black has more space in the center. However, white has some squares like e4 and c4 and might go for d4 himself, leading to a very equal structure, but the one with the most activity will have a favorable position in that case. It is often also possible to play d4 in such positions, but here it's not so good for white, as after knight takes e4, knight takes e4, pawn takes e4, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, queen h4, putting pressure on f2, black has some initiative. E takes d5 was played in the game, and Anish Giri played knight takes d5. Bishop c2 was played, queen c7 defending the pawn on e5, d4 going for what we had been talking about, taking away black's space advantage. However, now the person with the most active pieces will have a better position. Pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, rook a8, and if white now tries to take on e6, getting the bishop pair and weakening black's structure, black will have serious pressure onto f2. Bishop g5 was played in the game. Knight f4. Queen d2. Bishop d5, putting strong pressure on the g2 pawn. Rook takes e8. Rook takes e8. And rook e1. In a game where Nils Grandelius played with the white pieces, his opponent played the more accurate rook takes e1 perhaps, queen takes e1, and king f8, removing the idea of queen e8. And now it's not so easy for white, as black wants to take on g2. In order to defend against this, white has to make some sort of confirmation, like bishop takes g6. Rook e5 was played in the game, slightly less accurate, but not a bad move either. Bishop takes f4. Rook takes e1. Queen takes e1. Queen takes f4. Queen e8 check. Perhaps the queen might end up a bit misplaced here and too far advanced, so it's probably not the most accurate move, and knight g5 is probably better right away. Queen e8 was played. Knight f8, and here bishop b3 was played. Knight g5 is maybe still possible now, but after bishop c5, black has a strong bishop on dark squared bishop, and it's probably slightly better. Here bishop b3 was played. This is a very serious confession by white, as now after bishop takes d4, pawn takes d4, bishop takes b3, pawn takes b3, we reach a very static position where white has some serious weaknesses, the isolated d pawn and the doubled b pawns, giving black a clear advantage. After queen takes d4, knight f5 would be possible, so this is best to avoid for black. So queen f6 was played in the game, queen e4, g6. It's often useful to give your king some space to avoid getting back rank mated. It's an improvement to your position in many cases. Knight e2. Knight e6 was played in the game. I'd like to mention that after queen e6, queen takes e6, knight takes e6 is in black's favor. Knight endgames have a higher win tendency than queen endgames, and as black is the one with the advantage, black would have a higher chance to win. So after queen e6, white would move away their queen to either f3 or d3. After knight e6, h4 was played, h5, g3. This is a typical pawn formation in many endgames. Queen d8 with the idea of queen b6 to put pressure on the white pawns, queen e5, and here queen b6, a bit too early perhaps. If you want to, you can stop the video to find out how white equalizes. Alright, it's the simple d5, very logical move, getting rid of white's weakness. Pawn takes d5, queen takes d5. Now white has been able to trade off a pawn and the weak pawn too, so it's very close to equal here, if not equal. King f8, knight c3, queen c7, knight e4. Queen c1 check was played, king g2, queen takes b2. What is the simplest move for white in this position to obtain a draw? Alright, it's queen takes b7, quite obvious move, as after a4 you're able to play queen a8 check and then collect on a4. And after a move like queen e5, you have b4, getting rid of another pawn. As after a4, white has knight c5, forcing off many exchanges. Knight takes c5, pawn takes c5. White has the slightly faster pawn, so black is advised to take on c5. And after queen e8, king g7, queen takes a4, we reach a completely drawn endgame, where they would probably agree to a draw. However, in the game, Alekseenko went for the very strange move Queen d7. Perhaps he relaxed a bit too early after reaching a drawn position from a verse position. b6 was played. Knight d6 was played. If you want to, you can stop the video and find out how black will punish white if white tries to go for the b6 pawn with queen d6 check, followed by queen takes b6. It's not so difficult. After queen d6, king g7, queen takes b6, a4 works, as after b4, your black's pawn is much faster than white's pawn. So knight d6 was played in the game. Black has only one move, but it's a logical one. Queen f6, defending on f7. Queen e8 check, king g7, queen back to d7, threatening knight e8, and hoping for a repetition with king f8. However, as Giri has one pawn more, even though his opponent has some activity, he goes for the win. King g8, queen e8, and knight f8. Queen c6 was played in the game, trying to win the pawn on b6, queen d8, and here knight b7 is a much more accurate move, but it's not easy to spot, as after queen d4, knight d6, black can't improve their position, and if they go for queen c5, you can simply trade queens and play knight b7 with an easy draw. However, the game saw knight c4, which is a logical move trying to win on b6, but black has these small things in the position that allow him to get some advantage. Knight e6, knight takes b6 is forced, of course, as after queen takes b6, queen takes b6, knight takes b6. Black is able to win the b3 pawn and get a very strong a pawn with either knight c5 or knight d4. I would like to note, however, that knight d4 is the slightly more technical move, as it prevents white's king from playing king f3. So knight takes b6 was played, knight d4, and here queen c5 was played, but it turns out that the shocking move queen b7 is a draw, as after knight takes b3, white has an impressive resource, knight d7. If black now defends their knight with a4, white has a forced repetition of moves with knight e5, threatening to take on f7, so black has to defend with either queen e8 or queen f8, but the same move will follow, knight d7 back. And if queen d8, then it's a repetition, but if black chooses to play on with either queen e7 or queen d6, white doesn't really care, as white plays queen a8 check and later takes on a4, reaching a completely drawn position. But after queen c5, black is able to play knight takes b3, queen b5, and knight d2, with the idea that after queen takes a5, which was played in the game, black is able to develop a slight initiative with the move queen d3, threatening to checkmate white with queen f1 check, king h2, knight f3. So white has to do something to defend against this. In the game, Kiril Alekseenko went for queen a1, defending against queen f1, queen e4 was played, king g1, and now black has a cute way to win a pawn. If you want to, feel free to stop the video and find it. Alright, it's knight f3, with the idea that after king f1, black has a beautiful move knight takes h4, winning a pawn, as if white takes back on h4, black has queen h1 check, and is later able to take the queen after the king moves. Queen e8 was played in the game by Alekseenko, getting the queens off the board. Queen takes e8, knight takes e8. Now we have a drawn position, but white has to be slightly careful. However, it shouldn't be too difficult to draw this position. Knight f3 was played in the game, king g2, knight e5, f4, knight g4, knight b6, getting the knight back into the game, king f8, knight d5, king e8, knight c3, king e7. We are soon going to reach a critical moment, but not yet. Knight e4, knight e3 check, king f3, knight c4. Knight g5 is played in the game, but maybe knight f2 is simpler, with the idea of going g4 and trading off one pawn. Knight g5 is played, king f6, knight e4, king f5, knight f2, knight d2, king e3, knight f1, king f3, knight h2, and here white only has one move, king g2. If you want to, you can find out how black is able to win after king e2 in this position. It's not very difficult. It's a good technique for winning such positions, weakening your opponent's structure with h4, as after pawn takes h4, king takes f4, the h-pawn becomes a serious target for black. King g2 was played in the game, knight g4, knight h3, f6, king f3, king e6, black tries to get their king around, king e4, king d6, knight g1, king c5, king d3, knight h6, the idea of knight f5 in some cases, king e3, knight f5, king f3, king c4, continuing to try to get the king around, knight h3, knight d4, a repetition of moves followed by king d4. Knight f2 was played, knight d6, and the blunder was made, knight h3. Now it's a very difficult question. How can black exploit this blunder? If you want to, you can stop the video and try to find out how black is able to do so. Right, black could have played king d3, not so easy to see, king g2, king e3. Soon black's idea becomes very apparent. Perhaps one of the only ideas to win such positions. Knight f2, king d2, knight h3, knight f5, knight g1, king e3, knight h3, and h4, making white's structure a bit soft and easier to target. The game saw, however, knight e4 being played, knight g1, king d3, king g2, knight d2, king f2, king e4, knight e2, knight b1, knight g1. Here they were in severe time trouble, both opponents. h4 was played. Now Giri goes for the win. However, this isn't winning at the moment, as black's knight on b1 is severely misplaced. Knight h3 was played, which is the only way to hold the draw. Pawn takes h4, king takes f4 is not very interesting, as the pawn on h4 is extremely weak. However, knight f3 also loses, as after pawn takes g3, king takes g3, knight c3, knight d2 check, king d3, knight d5. Black is able to put a lot of pressure on f4, and white doesn't have too much choice except to go for f5, which becomes almost the same as in the game. Knight h3, king f5, pawn takes h4, king g4, f5, the only way to draw this position. After king takes f5, king g3, should be an easy draw. White has relatively active pieces. Pawn takes f5, king e3, knight c3, knight f2. So far this is a draw. King g3. And if you want to, you can stop the video now to find the two ways white can draw this. White has knight h1 for starters, giving a check to the king. And it doesn't matter what black does. If black takes an h4, white is able to play king f4, and pick up the pawn on f5, and it's a draw. And if black plays king g4, knight f2 may lead to a repetition after king g3. However, h5 also barely wins, barely holds a draw, as after knight d5, king d4, knight f4, h6 running with the pawn, king takes f2, h7, knight g6, king d5, f4. White is exactly in time with king e4, trying to promote their own pawn, with king f5, forcing the knight to move, knight h8, king takes f6, black's king moves, king g2, f2, king takes h8, f1 queen, king g7. This is a draw, because with the h pawns on the 7th rank, with the king nearby, it's a draw against the queen, due to stalemate ideas. Unfortunately though, the game was blundered away with knight d3, knight d5, king d4, knight f4, and now after the knight moves, black is able to take the pawn on h4. It's very important that black has been able to keep both the f-pawns, as one f-pawn is not enough to win, but two are, because black is able to force white into a winning queen and pawn endgame. King e3, king g3, knight b3, knight e6, knight d2, f4 pushing the pawn, king e2, knight g5, king f1, f3, king g1, f2, king f1, f5. In this position, Alekseenko resigned, realizing that after the knight moves, black would play knight f3 and promote their pawn. Alright, looking forward to making the next video.